Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. I am super excited about today's video. I am doing my first ever book haul, and this book haul I'm focusing on some of my first edition copies of books. And now, so I seek out first editions for books that aren't too old, because once you get into like older books, the very first editions are like thousands of dollars and it's ridiculous. So my first edition books, the oldest one I have is from the 80s. So as of right now, actually that's not true. I have one from the 70s. So the 70s is the oldest I have as far as first editions go. And I have recently bought quite a few books. Once I bought a few, I just had a hard time stopping myself buying books. I'm sure other people who buy books can relate to that, where once you have some, it's addicting. But anyway, so I'm going to split up my first edition videos into 2 videos to start. And down the road, I plan on continuing collecting books. So if you enjoy book hauls and you enjoy vintage books, because I will be having a separate video where I talk about my books that are from 1950 and older. So that will be a separate video. So if you enjoy vintage books and special edition books, and just talk about books in general, and every now and then I talk about movies, definitely subscribe to my channel, and yeah, it would mean a lot to me. But anyway, so on to part 1 of my first editions book haul. So like I said, a lot of these books aren't especially old, but they are all first editions, and I am starting with my copy of The Nightingale by Kristen Scott Hanna, which is a first edition. And I also wanted to share how you can know a book is a first edition. So right here, this one says first edition right there. So this one says first edition right there, and then right below it there's the series of numbers. And if the series of numbers begins or ends with a 1, it means it's the first edition. So this one says first edition, and then it has a 1 right there. So that's how I know it's the first edition. Anyway, so The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This one is a used copy, obviously, and it has these library stickers. But aside from that, it's in great shape, so I'm happy with it. And I got it for a good price, which, by the way, all these books I bought either on thriftbooks.com or abebooks.com. And Thrift Books is cheaper sometimes, but Abe Books I like because you get more descriptions on the book. Like there's one I bought from Thrift Books that did not come with the book jacket, and so that was frustrating. Whereas on Abe Books, they are more detailed on the condition of the book, so you know better about what you're getting, so that's something. But anyway, so first one, Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, which I recently did a video about her, about why I have a love-hate relationship with her books. So that was my most recent video, so you can go check that out. And I just talk about my feelings on Kristen Hanna. But anyway, on to the next book. Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. So I read this one for the first time a few months ago, and I did a podcast where I compared it with the movie. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book. It's not one I would recommend to just anybody, but it's a great thriller, keeps you on the edge of your seat, keeps you guessing. Because I knew the twist, there was parts in the beginning that maybe was kind of a slow burn, but she's a great author though, and I definitely will be reading some of her other books. And this one also says first edition in it, so that's how I know. And now on to one of the books I was most excited about. So when I bought it, I knew I was buying, so all of these are also hardcover. I'm trying to avoid paperback. So all of these are first edition hardcover books, which also, in most cases, the very first edition of a book, it's going to be hardcover. Like very rarely is a first edition in paperback. So if you buy it in paperback, you'll be getting the first edition in that version, but it's not like the first edition, if that makes sense. Anyway, this next one, Another Bullshit Night in Suck City, which is a memoir by Nick Flynn. And I also read this one for, my camera's kind of blurry right now. Anyway, so having some technical difficulties. But anyway, so this memoir by Nick Flynn, this was one of the best books I read this year. And if you want to listen to my podcast on it, I go in a lot of detail as to why I love this so much. And I highly recommend it. If you like memoirs, and you should read it. And Nick Flynn is a poet. He has books of poetry, which I'm not really interested in reading books of poetry. However, I love reading books written by poets because it's just such beautiful writing. And it's also unique too, because he has different chapters that veer off from the narrative, but it just adds to the story. So you're not annoyed that it's veering off from the narrative. You're enjoying it, I guess is what I'm saying. Anyway, so this one, I knew it was a first edition because it said so. So this one also has the writing saying first edition. But what I did not know is that it was also signed by the author. It was made out to someone else, as you can see, but he signed it in Boston back when it came out, I assume. And so, yeah, so I had no idea I was buying a signed copy, and I love this book so much. So that was just so exciting when I saw that not only is it in great condition, but it was signed by the author. So that was awesome. And to go along with this one, I also have the first edition of the reenactments, which is also by Nick Flynn. And these two, like this one is almost a sequel, you could say. And so if you read Suck City, I highly recommend reading this one after. Well, you should read Suck City, watch the movie being Flynn, and then read the reenactments. But if you don't feel like watching the movie, you could just read the two books and that would work too, I guess. But this one is a first edition and it's paperback. And as I just said, most first editions are always hardcover, but this one is an exception because this is a first edition, yet it's paperback. But anyway, both of these memoirs by Nick Flynn, and they were both so good. I can't recommend them enough. And yeah, if you want to know even more detail about it, I will link to my podcast below where I talk in detail about both of these and why I loved them so much. And now this next one isn't technically a first edition, but it is a reprinting like of an exact replica of the first edition. And it is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. And if I were to have bought the actual first edition, it's super expensive, whereas this one was a good price. And it comes in this cool book slip, which has his picture on the back. Book jacket is in great condition. And it's just so pretty too with the drawing, the painting on that. So yeah, not the actual first edition, but a replica of the first edition. And also I like the way, even if it didn't have the book jacket, I like the way that looks too. Some of them, which I'll be showing one that doesn't have the book jacket, and it's just a boring black book. So I like that this one at least has some color to it if I did lose the book jacket, but I plan on keeping this in very good condition. Anyway, this one, all of these books, by the way, are books I've read. And this one, it's like not my favorite book ever, but I did really enjoy it. And it's John Steinbeck. I haven't read Grapes of Wrath yet. I plan on reading that next year, but this is a great read. I could do a podcast where I compare it with the movie. The movie stars James Dean, but you know, this is like a big book and the James Dean movie covers like such a tiny portion of the actual story, and it's just not very well done. Like I think they should remake it and just try to fit at least more than that movie did. But yeah, great book. Would recommend to most people. There's actually, speaking of Gone Girl, the like antagonist in this movie is like a woman who is a psychopath. So yeah, Gillian Flynn talks about how she wishes there were more evil woman characters. You got one in this book. And yeah, like this one, it has like religious allegories to it, if that's the right word. East of Eden, obviously. And then, so it's sort of telling the story in a way of Adam and Eve, and Cain and Abel. In a sense, like that's what inspired the characters in this book. And so the fact that the bad person is a woman, he's insinuating that Eve, like she's inspired by Eve, who was considered bad because she tempted Adam to eat the apple. And so I don't love that because, I don't know, this is probably a discussion for another time, but as I'm a Christian, but I believe that it's good they ate the apple and it's good they left Eden. So Eve was just doing what she knew she had to do. So she wasn't bad and she wasn't evil, and she gets such a bad rap for that with so many Christian denominations. But anyway, that's a discussion for another time. But good book, a bit more, more intense than you might think. I don't know. Anyway, really happy to have this cool special edition. And now this next book, it's a first edition, so that's cool. So here it doesn't say first edition, but it has the sequence of numbers that end with a 1. So that's how I know it is first edition. And it is Wiseguy, which it doesn't even have a cover, and this is the one that's so boring. And it's a first edition, but I might look into getting another one just so I can either buy another one that's also a first edition that has the book cover, or I might just take a book cover off a different one and put it on here, because this one is just so boring. Even this part, like, it's not especially interesting. But it's Wiseguy by Nicholas Pileggi, and this one inspired the movie Goodfellas. And I was surprised how much I enjoyed this book. So I definitely wanted to have it for my bookshelf. And yeah, I would highly recommend it. Even if you've seen the movie and you're like, oh, I don't need to read the book because I've seen the movie already, kind of a thing. If you enjoy reading, then you're still going to enjoy this book because it goes more in detail, obviously. But yeah, it's just so entertaining. It's very well written. And Nicholas Pileggi had been a former mafia journalist. So yeah, really good book. And out of all the books I am talking about in this video, this one is the only one I have not read. I have not read Casino, but it is also written by the same guy who wrote Wiseguy, Nicholas Pileggi. So I figure I'll like it, most likely. And Martin Scorsese also made this movie as well, because he also did Goodfellas. So I'm excited to talk about it on the podcast at some point. But this one too is also the first edition, so that's exciting. And it's in such great condition. It's got the book jacket and everything. And this one too, it doesn't say first edition, but we've got the numbers there with the 1. So yeah, I'm excited to read this one. It probably won't be till, it will be next year sometime. I'm not quite sure when, but excited to get into this one. And I will add one more book to this list, which this one, I bought it and I thought I was buying the hardcover, but then I got it and it's this tiny little paperback, and it's a paperback. So it's the first edition printed like this, but it's not the actual first edition. But it came out, this paperback came out, was published the same year as like the book was published. So it's from the same year. And I actually like this cover better than the first edition cover, but it's If Beale Street Can Talk by James Baldwin. And this is a great book. And so I'm still going to keep this paperback, but I also bought a hardcover with a dust jacket, or some people call it a dust jacket, some people call it a book jacket. But anyway, the one I have coming in the mail is a hardcover version. So you'll be seeing that in a future video. But yeah, this is one of those books that I love and I'm totally fine owning multiple copies of. And I have a few books in the future where I'll share. So I've kind of stocked up on the same book, but different editions of the same book. And so I'll do videos where I share my different copies of the same book. I won't do it for this one because I'll eventually just have the 2. It'll be this one and the hardcover. But anyway, this one is 1974, first edition as a paperback. Yeah, and so this one, it says first printing, and it has the 1. But again, it's not technically the first edition. It's just the first edition in this version, if that makes sense. And yeah, that wraps it up for my first book haul video of some of my first editions. So subscribe to my channel so you can stay updated when I post even more in the future. And my next one, I'll be posting a book haul for the oldest books that I own. And that one's really cool. Like, I just love old books, but they tend to be more expensive, of course, especially if they're in good shape. So yeah, anyway, I'm really excited though about all the books I've been collecting, and excited about all these book haul videos that I'll be making and that you'll have available to you. So yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video, and I'll see you next time.